Hi, everybody. This is Gaynor Meilke, and this is Moving the Needle. And today I am joined by my co-host John Higgins and Kenny Jain from Mindspace. So, John, do you want to introduce yourself?
Sure. So hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us today. And if you haven't joined us on any of the previous podcasts, just understand that what we do, Gaynor and I, try to bring you information about how to move the needle, as we call it, on your digital transformation. There's so many opportunities now for firms practitioners and firms to be more efficient with technology, and that's really what we try to help you understand how to do that. So thanks for joining us.
And I would say that today's talk with Kenny is maybe not directly related to technology, although it certainly has a role, but it's all about increasing capacity through both outsourcing for talent and then also having the right technology in place to make that a seamless and successful process. So Kenny, welcome. And if you wanted to introduce yourself and just tell us a little bit about Mindspace, that would be great.
Thanks, Gaynor. Uh, Thank you for having me here. Myself, I'm the co-founder with Mindspace Accounting Outsourcing, and we have been, in last 14 years, worked with a lot of CPA firms and accounting firms in the US. We are ISO 27001 certified as a data security protocol and have been providing services from tax return outsourcing to CAS accounting outsourcing. And our main thrust is primarily on using RPA models and technology in outsourcing. Thank you.
Yeah, well, thank you. And it's certainly a good time to be talking about this in our tax six-pack, because obviously with a lot of firms that are either primarily tax or they have a large percentage of their revenue coming in from tax, outsourcing has become something that a lot of firms are looking into or actively doing. And so what have you been seeing in the market, Kenny, as far as an uptick in outsourcing or maybe higher volumes from firms that were already doing it?
Well, it's very interesting. It's pre-pandemic and post-pandemic, as I would draw a line. And I have seen a huge uptick where I used to see when we've been doing a lot of exhibits, including account techs that used to happen in Vegas, and then with scaling post-pandemic. And I can see the difference wherein the interest has been it's largely positive. Everybody either has experienced it or is planning to work on it, whomsoever we talk about in last 2-3 years. The reason has been primarily there's a talent shortage that's been the prime mover, which actually is causing. Apart from that, there has been a remote working normalcy. That's an interesting phenomena and acceptability that somebody who's remote is working along. That's are the two key drivers, apart from the cost advantages, that has given us a kind of a boost.
Yeah.
So I think that I was going to say, well, I think one of the silver linings of the pandemic, if there's a silver lining, is that it did cause the CPAs to really be a lot more comfortable working with cloud-based solutions, and obviously your outsourcing service is entirely based in the cloud. So that's a positive move forward for the profession.
So John, I was going to ask you, what are you hearing from firms as you're talking with them and going to conferences about outsourcing in general?
Yeah, there's no question that kind of to what Kenny was just saying, that there's the attitude, I'll just call it the attitude of small practitioners to be interested in embracing the concept of outsourcing that just didn't exist 5-6 years ago. And I think Kenny did a pretty good job laying out why that is. And you know, and the talent shortage from everything we hear is going to get more acute. So I think that bodes well for your business model, Kenny.
So speaking of talent then, Kenny, how do you train your team to be able to service, US accounting firms, and what kind of processes involved with that?
Very interesting question. And we used to grapple with being so far from the land and to train team members in that. It's been quite a sea change in terms of CPEs, etc., that we have now implemented within our organization. This all we are a team of almost 140 tax preparers and
Wow.
accountants. The way that we ensure that the team is trained is typically we've got access to some specific CPE modules, specifically on tax side of things, US GAAP, and as well as in on CAS, how sales tax needs to be done. We go to that extent, and how the payroll needs to be processed. Apart from these CPEs, we've got practical tests that we have. We have signed up with a couple of accounting test providers. We intend to make team go for those tests, have some incentives around that, so that they embrace the learning and development, which is imperative when we are into an accounting outsourcing domain, and they are able to serve better with the clients and get themselves a raise and a getter client appreciations along with that.
Well,
These been our success, and we focus it every month and every quarter. The review process happens.
Wow, that's great, because I know there's probably a lot of firms that don't even do that much training of their team. It's a kind of learn as you go type of model. But I know, Kenny, you and I had spoken as well that you really offered two different types of outsourcing. And so I think that's also an important thought for firms who are maybe considering outsourcing or doing one type of outsourcing and maybe want to look at another. So do you want to explain a little bit about the different options of like models of outsourcing? Because that can be useful.
Absolutely. And this is something that I have touched upon in the book also I wrote on how effectively accounting firms can outsource and what could be the high points. But in terms of services, it's quite interesting that we've got a model wherein we offer specifically that we own any work that gets delegated to us or entrusted, as that we own that work, get it delivered, supervise it, and deliver it, be it in CAS or in tax. And specifically, the service level agreement happens around what are the deliverables. Apart from that, there have been medium to large accounting firms wherein we find that they expect us, and this is typically pre-tax season, that they hire a specific team from us, which is a dedicated tax preparer or a dedicated CAS accountant, and he works during the tax season or around the year as the SLA between the firm and us.
Kenny, excuse me. I assume there's a certain volume requirement to get a dedicated person. Is that accurate?
That's true, but that's true in case of tax accounting.
Okay.
And tax return prep. It's very important that we've got certain volumes. Having said that, this is something is more like a diagnostics or more like a discovery call that we take with any accounting firm is what we offer to someone who's got reasonable tax return volumes. And apart from that, John, it's very interesting that some of the accounting firms in the letter offering that I have of a dedicated team manager, and wherein that person is responsible for and reports directly to the accounting firm, and we just manage their tools or possibly their learnings, etc. But the deliverables are then supervised, etc., by the accounting firm. This way, they can have flexibility in scaling, A, and B, they can focus more on what sort of work they intend to do, whether it's a quality work or a low-end work. But this gets decided during the discovery call that we have with them.
So we're recording this in the middle of January, and let's just use an example. Let's say I'm a small practitioner. I use UltraTax to do tax preparation, and my one key tax employee just told me that she's leaving. And so, what's my opportunity? Can I at this stage of the game, in terms of the tax season window, is it possible then to go through the process of getting onboarded with your service? And could you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. This is exactly a similar kind of situation happened to us 2 years back when one of the team members was leaving and she was at a very critical position in the firm. Now, in a discovery call, I typically would be asking how many number of hours probably is dedicated to which part? Is it like admin sort of things or tax or client onboarding? Based on that, for us, it's easier to propose whether it's better to have someone wherein as a dedicated team member and we facilitate in a structured manner, or just to outsource us the work. So we typically give them error-free work with lesser supervision. The work that we give with the offering that we have got helps the accounting firm to focus primarily on the more value-add works. And in this scenario, when you're talking about, I would suggest the ideal proposition would be to start with the first proposition of service, which is wherein we supervise everything, and then move on to the latter part during the course of the journey.
Okay. And would you use my UltraTax software, or do you use your UltraTax software in that example?
That's a great question. And I would have touched upon it that in terms of the tech stack, we prefer to use and suggest that we use the tech stack that is being used by the firm internally. However, in the discovery call, we try and give our best practices, wherein we would recommend if they're using UltraTax or Pro Series or Lessert, we use that platforms. And we've got proficiencies and we've got team members who've got specific proficiencies and certifications in specific tax platforms or CAS accounting platforms.
Okay.
So how does that work then? That's as we're talking about technologies, if somebody's using a software, maybe that's lesser known or something like that, will your team learn it then? Like if they're kind of doing that management model where the team member from Mindspace becomes part of the accounting firm team, if they would kind of get up to speed on that. And then if they're outsourcing the work, you have like the best practice tech stack. Is that the way it would work?
Well, if we come across an accounting firm which is using a lesser known tax platform specifically, or which is typically more complex in certain scenarios in terms of workflows, we would recommend, because there is a learning curve towards it, we always recommend our second service offering, wherein we provide a dedicated team member who undergoes the learning curve, and we manage that team member. This gives more confidence to the accounting firm in terms of the deliverables.
Yeah. So that's
And there is a longevity towards the team member as well.
So one of the questions that I have, and maybe John, you have it too, is from a security standpoint. Obviously, you're using cloud-based, apps that people are familiar with. But then what about the actual team members as well? Because we know that security is not just a technology problem, can be a person problem as well. So how is that handled in the outsourcing model?
In terms of data security, first and the foremost is the certifications. ISO 27001 is a certification in itself, which implies that the organization is adhering to data security protocols. And this is internationally accepted, specifically in the US. Apart from that, data security, there are certain physical controls that we have initiated on our own. For example, monitoring the whole premises, and 95% of the team work from office. So that's our USP. We typically are more on the conservative side, wherein we have our team members work from office. That in turn implies that we have to invest a lot on the team because we have to provide them with a drop-off, etc., or possibly other incentives because they are working in the office at night. Apart from that, we've got physical security that's in place in office. In addition, we've got certain endpoint control tools that we have implemented, which then is analyzed by the data security team every week. These data security protocols are very important, apart from the basic one like twin monitors, firewalls, or XDR, antivirus platforms, and DLPs. That is something that we've already implemented, and that comes with our ISO 27001 certification.
All right. So what are some of the pitfalls that you see around outsourcing, like from getting prepared to do it well in your firm so that you avoid those pitfalls? Are there any things that you can recommend, kind of like a, top 5 points or something like that, where, if somebody is looking to do this for the first time in their firm, they can feel a little bit more confident knowing like what to avoid or what to do?
Well, I would say it's been through my journey for last 14 years. I have tried, and this I have mentioned in my book as well, wherein first and foremost is to identify what exactly is the piece they intend to outsource. The second thing is to analyze what sort of an outsourcing partner are they looking for, in terms of whether they're looking someone who can own the work, deliver the work with minimal supervision, error-free, or they're just looking for a dedicated team member just as a staffing service. The third thing, or possibly is for anyone who's pondering upon the outsourcing piece, is on the data security protocols, whether they have actually implemented the data security protocols and they've got enough certifications. Last but not the least would be in terms of whether they've got adequate references and wherein they can demonstrate the kind of work that they are delivering. Because it's very difficult to analyze any accounting outsourcing firm unless you've experienced those services. So experiences or their references through Trustpilot or any other feedback mechanism is very, very important.
I would agree with that for sure. And John, do you have any other thoughts on outsourcing from your experience with firms? Have you seen firms doing it?
Yeah, so what I wanted to get a sense, Kenny, is what is in terms of capturing the source documents for the tax return preparation, is that pretty much the responsibility of the local firm to get all the documentation and get it organized, or do you have a workflow software that you use particularly?
Great question, John. So we divide this, and this is something, again, we propose to the tax accounting firm is that let us do the heavy lifting. We've got tools to organize those documents, whatever way they have been received, whether they've received through emails, paper copies, etc. Just get it scanned or just upload it to the secured server where we can access it, arrange it before we transcribe it into a tax return.
So as far as what you just said there with paper copies or emails, obviously we always discourage that for clients to do that. So it's like a best practice from Mindspace then, if a firm is receiving things by email and paper based, are you directing them to use some kind of portal, or do you set that up for them?
Well, that's something which we impress a lot. The reason why is the easier the records are for us to organize or to access, and the easier for us is to have a faster turnaround in terms of any tax returns that we are doing. Having said that, tools like Canopy, TaxDome is helping a lot to give you in arranging accounting records and tax records, and it has become more like a platform or pivot wherein we can collect all the common pivot for the communications with the clients, and we can pick up the data in whatever format is coming from there and organize it. So these are part of our certain best practices and the tools that we recommend to our clients.
Kenny, what's the minimum number of returns I would need to outsource to you to set up an account?
Depends upon the nature of tax returns, but when we talk about 1040s, typically I would say between 300 to and above is what I say could be a benchmark when it is 1040s. However, for business tax returns, it starts with 50 plus.
Okay.
So that's how it's stacked up. Having said that, it also depends upon how good are the accounting records for whom are you looking for us to outsource. Because there has been instances in our experience previously wherein we have been talking about going for the tax returns, but we start the whole relationship with CAS, cleanup of the present businesses, because this is again a challenge with accounting firms. The data that has been sent by clients are not organized, and there is a lot of catch up that is required, or there's a high level review which is required before it gets to the tax return in a position to do a tax return.
So I guess from your perspective, John, are there any other questions that you have around technology, or anything that you see firms are doing that we haven't covered with Kenny that you might have questions on?
Maybe along the lines of like if I'm a CPA and I'm outsourcing my tax prep to your service, what's my ability to communicate with the person doing the work? Is like, can we jump on Zoom calls, or is it all in the background? How does that kind of work?
Uh, in fact, whenever we are starting a relationship, the the manager at the CPA firm or the owner gets directly introduced to the person who is working.
Okay.
In our firm, relation, this relationship is transparent. There is no hideout that who's working and who's not. So he knows the person who's working on it. He knows who's the person who is reviewing it. And we have a common window where he can talk to him either on Slack or Teams, whatever the scenario may be. And maybe
Okay.
we can fix up some time for the Zoom calls.
Mhm. That's great. So I think that's really important too. I know from just getting to know Mindspace a little bit, in the past few weeks, it's the relationship is very important to you. And so it's really, you've got long-term clients and clients, I think, in different niches in accounting as well. So a lot of e-commerce clients, people who are serving restaurant clients, you really have the tech stack and best practices down for that. And definitely the team training is really impressive as well.
Absolutely. And I wanted to add something to it. For us, the most important thing is the relationship that we carry with the accounting firm. We are just their another team member. And that's how is being built within the organization. It's not that just we have to finish the job. This is the SLA. We have to turn it around. It's about the relationship that we are carrying it for next n number of years.
When I think too, that can be really important when you're in a crunch like tax season and you've got to make all these deadlines, and it's important to have a team that's just as dedicated to getting it done, with you, because as we brought up in this interview, anything can happen in tax season, and it often does, right? It's like, people quit, people leave, people get sick, it's,
Or
clients are late, and it's a bunch of
Yeah.
stuff that's happening. So that's great. John, do you have any other thoughts
Yeah, just
on?
one last thing I was going to ask about. So, do your team members ever interface with my clients directly? Like if I'm really too busy, or do I have to be kind of the go-between in all cases?
in ideal scenario, John, I prefer when we are like into a newer relationship, maybe a year-old relationship, or we're just starting, is to keep uh, either yourself or somebody in the accounting firm office becomes the interface. Having said that, as we've taken the baby steps and you develop a trust, we offer this as a separate service when there is a relationship lead who takes care of the client onboarding, communication with the client, etc.
Yeah,
So
that's really pretty valuable. I mean, I could see build, like a 1 or 2 person operation could build a pretty big firm that way.
correct. Uh, this is very beneficial for someone who is small in size, I reckon,
Mhm.
because that's the piece takes a lot of time in communications. So there is this kind of a service. If it is combined with technology tools that we've discussed, makes it really very possible and very scalable as well.
Yeah.
And I think that's really important, that if somebody's, kind of stuck at the 11th hour here heading into tax season, there's an option to get some help. But then, if you're not going to outsource this tax season, or, you haven't done it in the past couple of years, make a game plan to start considering it, and definitely get it in place before extension season. So then you can have some onboarding time, throughout those post-tax season months, and then get yourself set up for success. And, one thing we didn't really hit on hard, but it makes perfect sense too, is that when you outsource the tax returns and the CAS work, that means you can spend more time on advisory and doing other things that, add more value for your clients and then also can make your firm more money. So that's another big piece and reason to outsource as well. So really part of a business strategy as opposed to just getting the work done.
And I think it's peace of mind also, of course, because it gives you access to a whole bank of resources. So as you need them, you can tap into them, especially as we talked about with the, continuing shortage of qualified people here in the United States. That's helpful to have that resource available.
Yeah, it's a resource and a relationship. So I'm sure that if a firm has a question or they have an issue or they said, what would it look like if I did X, Y, or Z? You're doing more of a customized outsourcing strategy here. So they'd be able to get some answers and then see how it would fit within their business model. So that's really valuable. Sure.
Great.
Excellent. Well, everybody start thinking about strategic outsourcing and how that looks to your firm. And if you've got questions, I'm sure Kenny and his team would be happy to answer them. And so would John and I. So be sure to put any comments below. And John, do you have anything in closing?
Well, just want to thank you, Kenny, for taking the time to chat with us today. And I think it's a great service that you're offering. So I wish you much success.
Thank you.
Very much so.
Thank you, John. Yeah.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.